Hi, everyone. We are um, we are using a topic on speech, guidelines for speech. And yesterday we talked about speech or speaking in reflective meditation groups. Today I will expand it a little bit and call it guidelines for speech, speaking with awareness and care. So in the Buddha's teaching, right speech, sometimes translated as appropriate, skillful, or useful speech, I think it can often be seen as something deceptively simple. We're given this kind of dictum: refrain from harsh, divisive, idle speech. Speak what's true, helpful, and timely. Well, okay. um, and it seems kind of simple, but not really not easy. Um, And so I'm just going to restate it in reflective meditation language. Again, deceptively simple. Right speech is something that arises from awareness of conditions and care for relationships. Okay, so there we go. Dharma talk finished. um, but moving on from a reflective perspective, then, which reflective meditation is, right speech is less a rule to follow and more a practice of reflection. What's moving me to speak? What am I hoping for? What might these words that I'm using set in motion? And it takes us a surprising amount of time in meditation and reflection to notice why we're speaking, from where and what it affects. And we don't have to do this with all our speech, but many of us discover that we replay conversations in meditation. This is very common. We hear people talking about it all the time because then we talk about the conversations as we reviewed them. But often, something's a little unresolved or said too quickly, or we withheld some of our speech. But sometimes it's just something to focus on. Words are very focusing. And often there's unknown reasons why we're replaying conversations. Can't always figure that out. So that reviewing, it's not a failure of practice. It's an evidence that speech really matters to us and that our words leave traces. So Stephen Batchelor translated the Pali word for speech, vaka, as voice, right voice. And I find that translation helpful, especially in our practice, where some of us are still finding our voices, others are practicing being heard, others are learning to restrain, and maybe all three at the same time is going on. But in an ethical framework, using our voice with self-honesty is one of our core precepts, and something that we've taken to heart in reflective meditation practice. And it's a training. We can't just do it by setting the intention. It really does take attention and action and follow through. The enactment of speaking with self-honesty to ourselves then translates to speaking with self-honesty to others. And when I was thinking about it as I was writing this talk, it's not just an ethical instruction. It really, for me, and I've seen it for others, it's been a precondition for wisdom to develop, for insight and understanding to develop. Because if we don't make a habit, and this is what a training is like, a new habit of admitting uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about our motives, about our participation in what may or may not have been harm, then what? I'm not going to answer then what. Leaving that as a question. But another way to say it is that, using our voices truthfully, it's not really only about being correct or accurate. It's really enacting the value of integrity and showing our willingness to stay in contact with what's happening rather than what we wish was happening. And so I'm going to say this next part kind of carefully because it's a view that I'm trying to articulate, with speech to myself, from the observation of the world of speech that we live in now. And it really helped me with my high emotions yesterday, with what I was reading and hearing and the way people were talking in the larger world. And then people in my smaller, more intimate world were talking about the people in the larger world. There was a lot of talking. Um, so, okay, so it's based on this um, Dharma asking us to find a middle way between extremes. And my extreme in this case was the false optimism, like everything's going to be okay, don't worry, it will work out, and unnecessary despair. How will we ever get through this? How will this work out? I have no idea. So my middle way right now is sounds kind of simple. Again, this kind of simple, uh, that simplicity I was talking about at the beginning. Some things will get worse and some things will get better. So this is really helping me right now. Um, I'll start with the some things will get worse because we're already seeing that. Speech that scapegoats and projects hatred seems to be becoming louder. And it hardens lines between myself and others. And there feels like there becomes a pressure to choose a side without nuance. And there's an intensity around speech right now. And for me, it doesn't feel like paranoia when I observe this. It feels like I'm recognizing patterns of speech. This is what happens. So some things will get better because there's also this conditions never move in one direction. There's too many conditions, there's too many directions. So at the same time that speech becomes more violent, other speech is becoming more precise and more accurate and has more integrity. And at that same time that voices amplify hatred, others are learning to speak with courage, and restraint, and integrity. And at the same time that trust erodes in some places, I'm seeing it deepen in smaller intentional communities, with friends, with circles of friends. So I'll end with this. On the long path of our lives, we will have many opportunities to test our integrity and to develop the skill to speak and listen, to express our values and to know when to restrain that expression, and to voice our truths and to know when to hold them while listening to others' truths. Okay, that's all I have for today. We'll